Hi everybody, this is obviously San Diego Ruby. My first slide says apologies for a very good reason. Last week I was supposed to be here doing this exact talk. Last month. I was sick and I was talking some stuff up. I tried to bring some in a jar, but I couldn't. I work for Slicehost, a company that works with VPSs. Today we'll be talking about deploying Rails applications on a Slicehost VPS. That's me right there, Jared Kuolt, superjared.com. What is a VPS? Well, it depends on who you ask. Nikolai back there, he thinks there's something else. He calls them accelerators. He calls them sliced cheese. We call them just slices. According to Wikipedia, a VPS, or a virtual private server, is a method of partitioning physical server computers into multiple servers that each has the appearance and the capabilities of running its own dedicated machine. Each virtual server can run its own full-fledged operating system, and each server can be independently rebooted. Very technical explanation, but not as good as mine. According to me, a virtual private server is a magic box that places power in the hands of the developer, assuming knowledge of the sophisticated spells like SSH, grep, and magic missiles. But seriously. Sorry, my subtle transition with that. What we offer, obviously, is Linus Torvalds plus some roots, which basically means we give you root access to your own Linux server. You can run Ubuntu or Debian, Gentoo. We have a few different distributions that we offer. Today I'll be talking about specifically Ubuntu or Ubuntu or however the hell you're supposed to call it. The reason, obviously, is that there's power. I mean, hell, you can run Quake 3 on it. Who needs a VPS? Well, I like to think that everybody needs a VPS, especially my mom. But who really needs a VPS? This guy. That's right, Bill Gates, circa 1985. Very, very, very cool guy. I think this is on in an issue of Teen Beat. I love how he's tossing that 5 1/4 inch floppy right there. Hi, I'm Bill Gates. No, but seriously, psych. No way. It's for real, true, honest to goodness, non-fictional, real life hackers. That's right, Angelina Jolie. Yeah, that's right. She likes her VPSs and so do you. It's good for everything, really. It's good for PHP and it's good for Java even. Not that I'd recommend that, but it's especially good for Ruby. Now with Ruby, as you know, you can develop in Ruby on Rails, and you can develop in camping and Merb. You can even just do straight up Ruby, however you want to do it. It's also good for Python. I, myself, am not just a Ruby guy, but I'm a Python guy. Before I even started with Ruby on Rails, I was doing a lot of Django development. So you can do Django, TurboGears, Pylons, etc. So really, a VPS is good for anything. Well, almost anything. Not quite. We offer the ability to do just about anything. We don't offer anything Windows, but still, actually, you can do ASP.NET if you want to use something like Mono. Not that I recommend that. Now, today again, I'm going to be discussing about how to deploy a Ruby on Rails application to one of our slices. So to start that, we have to talk about the installation of the software on the slide. We need to install the prerequisite software. Now, Ruby on Rails isn't just Ruby, it isn't just Rails, it's a full stack of things. Now, to install this full stack of things, we're going to use apt-get. apt-get is a package management tool used in Debian systems, Ubuntu systems, and pretty much anything that's based on Ubuntu. And it makes it very simple to install software this way. So let's say we've shelled into the slice, and we want to install all of our software. So we do sudo apt-get install Ruby, we want Ruby, MySQL Server, Ruby Gems, Ruby 1.8 dev. Now this is a special package because it includes all your Ruby header files so that you can compile against it. You're going to need that when we install Mongrel. The next package, Build Essential, also includes GCC and Make and other things that allow you to compile as well. The next package is MySQL Ruby for your MySQL binding, IRB, just in case you need that just extra little bit of and Nginx and Subversion, which we'll get to in a little bit. After we've installed all that, which takes maybe 4 or 5 minutes to download all the packages and install them, we want to update. Let's go ahead and update gem. So we do a sudo gem update, and we do a sudo gem update system. Now, when I was writing this out, I realized that there was this kind of odd problem. Why would gem fail at updating in the system? Well, as you can see, it says, note, gem error on line 23 of user bin gem is an uninitialized constant. Well, this is a fairly well-known bug, and it's very easy to fix. You just add this line, require ruby gems / gem runner, after the require ruby gems line in user bin gem. Kind of dumb that you have to do it, but it works. After you do that, go ahead and rerun the update of the system, and you're good to go. After that, we install Rails. Sudo gem install Rails, sudo gem install Mongrel cluster. That way, we've installed Rails and the Mongrel cluster through the gem system, and we can update it that exact same way. The next thing we do is we create the database. Now, we've already installed MySQL Server, but it's empty. There are no databases. There's nothing in there except the basic schema, and I think a test database comes by default. So on the slice, we log into MySQL. We say MySQL, root, meaning that I'm logging in as the root person, and I give my password. And then I say create database, my app. My app, I'm just going to call it my app as the database. And most people would say my app _ development, testing, or production. That's pretty common with Rails development. After that, I create a user that can access the database. I say grant all on my app.star, my app being the database, the .star saying all tables. I'm giving all privileges on all tables of my app to my user at localhost, meaning no other domain, no other IP, just the one from localhost, identified by this password. The process takes all of about 2 seconds. The next step is to create a repository. We're going to create a Subversion repository so that you can check in and out, you can roll back and create changes for your application. To do that, one simple line, SVN admin create repository. That last repository bit is the actual directory that I want the repository to stay in. From there, we have to import the project. Our project has been sitting on our laptop, sitting on our home system, and we haven't touched it other than developing it. We haven't put this on any other server. So to import the project from your local machine, say svn import my app using the svn plus SSH protocol. As an aside, I don't recommend using the svn serve application. It's useful, but when you can do it via SSH, it's much more secure. And then we give it the host, which is example.com, and then the path to the repository that we want to create. So we've already created home/Jared/repository, and then the my app is where it's actually going to live in the repository. The next line, -m initial import, basically is our check-in line. It's saying, these are my notes for this check-in. So this will be revision 1. Now on your local machine, when you import, you take that project and you throw it up on the server. You import it. Your local copy isn't a local working copy of the Subversion repository. So what we have to do is we just move it out of the way, and we say move my app to my app old. We're just going to place it aside and then check out from our repository our application in the next line. It's very similar to the line previous. Well, we're checking it out, and now we have it locally. So you can use that, my app, as your working copy, make your changes, make check-ins, etc. The next step is to set up Capistrano. Capistrano is a way to very easily and very quickly deploy your Rails application or other applications with a very simple deployment script. So the first thing we need to do is, in our application directory, we capify it, meaning that we initialize Capistrano on. So capify dot, meaning this directory. The next step is to enable the Mongrel Rails cluster for this application. This sets up a .yaml file so that the system knows how to run Mongrel for this application. So we configure it for production mode. You can see in -e production. And then the next one is for the port, which it will start with, which is port 3000. The next is the address, which is our loopback. The number of mongrels is 3, and then the actual directory we're going to use for our application on our server. The next line, svn add cap file, and then the mongrel cluster, and then the deployment.rb. All those files need to be added to our Subversion repository. Otherwise, we won't know about any of that stuff. So we add that, and then we check it in. My check-in line basically says adding mongrel cluster and Capistrano information. That's our configuration, and that's basically it. After that, Capistrano is ready. You're ready to use Capistrano to set up your server and to deploy to it. So the next line is cap deploy setup. That sets up your server, sets up the proper directories, and makes sure you have the appropriate versions of Rails set up. After you've set up Capistrano, you can deploy your application. The first time you have to deploy your application, you deploy it cold, meaning that it hasn't been deployed to the server yet. So that's how we do it. Cap deploy cold. And now you're up and running. Example.com for 3000. Beautiful. See? Surviving a reboot is different because when you install packages through apt-get, you install Nginx, you install things like MySQL Server, they are automatically set up with init scripts. These init scripts you can use to restart those services, and when the server comes up, it starts all the services as well. But since we just installed our Mongrel cluster using Capistrano, we need to do this ourselves. And it's very easy. I open up crontab using crontab-e, being edit, and I enter this information right here, at reboot, very self-explanatory. This is the command we're going to run, mongrel rails cluster start, and that is my mongrel cluster.yaml file. And that tells the server, hey, run this, you're done. Simple as that. So now that we have it up and running on port 3000, we want it to be running on port 80. Whenever you visit a website, 99% of the time when you visit a website, you're directed to port 80. The other times it's usually port 443 for SSL. So what we need to do is we need to implement an HTTP proxy on port 80 that basically spits back requests to our 3 different mongrels. We set up 3 mongrels, and they're each on port 3000, port 3001, and port 3002. We're going to use Nginx. Nginx is great. It's pronounced Nginx, not Nginx, like my coworker said. It's fast, super fast. It's got a very, very, very low footprint, and its configuration file is beautiful. It's very easy to use. You could probably look at it for just a second and figure out what the heck is going on. I mean, it almost looks like scripting. You know, it looks like you're actually writing script. So, as you can see, the first block is the Upstream block. This is where we set up what we're going to proxy to. So we're going to call it Mongrel. Simple as that. You can call it something else. For my website, superjared.com, I call it Superjared. So Upstream Mongrel, I set up the loopback addresses, and I give them all the ports, 3000 to 3002, and that's it for that. So we move on to the server module. We tell it to listen on port 80, and then we give it a server name, example.com. In this example, it says .example.com. Nginx has a very terse configuration. This says that every subdomain of example.com will be attributed or will work with this configuration. If I want to take out that preceding dot, it'll only work with example.com. I can also set up specific subdomains that I want to work. www.example.com. This way, however, I can use any. I can use I'm a stupid butt.example.com and it'll work. Obviously, that has to work if that'll only work if your DNS records are set up appropriately. The next line is your HTML root. It's where all your files are going to be. Your cache files, any of that stuff. JavaScript, images, etc. The next part is where it gets really cool. The first if you see there says if this request file name /index.html exists, rewrite it as that index.html file, and then break. meaning send that HTML file to the client. This is really great with Rails caching. If you set up a controller and you have an action under that controller that caches, let's say it's forum/post, you can save that as a .html file. And this is exactly how it knows how to figure that out. The second if is almost just as interesting because it says if the request file name without the index.html, if the request is something like /javascript/global.js, if it doesn't exist, then proxy back to your Mongrel. Basically, any request that shouldn't go to Rails, that shouldn't be a static HTML file, any request that isn't a static file will be proxied back to Mongrel. It's a really easy way to set up your 404s, 500s, etc. And so at that point, you're done. You have Nginx set up on port 80, pointing back to your Mongrels in the back, and everything's ready to go. Your slice is set up, and if for some reason it has to reboot, you're set. What now? Well, development doesn't just stop when you finally deploy. That's kind of the point of Capistrano. I can make changes to my project and check them back in, and then I can just deploy them. Once they're deployed, the website's updated, and lather, rinse, repeat. We're basically done at that point. This was kind of a trimmed down version of we have a series of articles on Capistrano and Rails and how to set them up on your slice at articles.slicehost.com. This, again, was written actually before those articles were up, but I definitely recommend, if you want to follow this procedure, just go to articles.slicehost.com. Thank you. Any questions? Yes. You initially set up the slide? Creating a slide. Actually, I guess I will need internet access. You can help me out with that. Picking up, you mean from outgoing? Mm-hmm. I do know that there were some mine type problems before. I don't know at what point those were fixed, but I haven't had any problems, and I've been using Nginx for a while. If you're proxying things, it's not going to be as easy. So this is just how I'm going to log into the Slice Manager. Obviously, if you're a customer, this is the screen you see if you just sign up. I'm going to log in. Nikolai wanted to see the manager and how to create a slice. As you can see, these are my slices right here, superjared.com, and another one I have. I can very simply add a slice. Say, okay, I want the 1024 slice. 1024 is how much RAM you get. This is $70 a month, 40 gigs of hard drive space, and 400 gigs of bandwidth. I can choose the base install that I want. I can say I want Arch or CentOS or whatever I want here. Otherwise, I can use a backup from another one of my slices. I can say, you know what, I'm going to use the backup of superjared.com to clone it, and then start it from there. But really, the simplest thing to do, you just set up a new slice. Once you hit add slice, it'll start creating it. And usually within 5 to 10 minutes, your new slice is all ready to go. You can log in and root and get going. You also have the DNS console right here, so you can update whatever DNS record you like. We have a web console as well, just in case you get locked out of SSH with your slice. You can easily launch that web console and use it just like it is SSH. It's a little slow because it uses AJAX, but it works really well. And yeah, the rest of it's pretty simple. You can resize, you can go up, down, you can go from a 256 to a 1024 or back down the opposite way at any time. You can rebuild it from any image at any time. You can delete it, do whatever you want. Pretty good. Any other questions? Well, we use Xen, if you've heard of Xen. There are a few different platforms for virtualization. There's OpenVZ, Xen, Virtuoso. I don't know if I'm overlapping any of those, but specifically we use Xen. We actually have we're using 2 data centers right now, and we're running 2 different versions of Xen. And we're waiting for Xen 4.0 to come out. Anybody else? Yeah. Actually, no. The company is based in St. Louis. The 2 guys started it. They had been, Matt and Jason, they had been doing virtualization for a larger company for quite some time. And then they decided that they could automate it. They said, you know what, let's do this. I don't want to deal with large companies. I want to be able to give this to people. And the easiest way to do that is to develop this all in Rails. Because a year ago, especially, Rails was a really hot ticket. And so they wrote this, I think, the original slice manager within just a couple months. We got it all up and running. And yeah, so they're in St. Louis. And they hired me just in October, I think, if I remember correctly. And it's those 2 guys, me, and we have a support guy in UK, Paul. So yeah, it's basically the 4 of us. We're doing pretty well. Closest competitors, there's linode.com. That's the one that springs to mind quickest. Also Joyent. However, Joyent, when you purchase, say, an accelerator, which is virtualized, kind of like our slices, you're getting Open Solaris. We offer Linux. Linode also offers Linux. Hopefully in the future, we'll actually be offering different BSDs, so FreeBSD, NetBSD, and quite possibly Open Solaris. Any question in the back? Yeah, actually, I think the main reason for using multiple Mongrels is that it helps increase concurrency. You can have more users on your site at the same time, as well as, to be honest, I'm not as familiar with Mongrel as I am with some of the other implementation methods. But yeah, it's very common for people to use multiple Mongrels. It's probably the preferred method instead of just using one Mongrel, especially as your front end. And what we recommend is 3 Mongrels per 256 megs of RAM. You don't really want to go over that because then you'll start swapping. Mongrels tend to start using a lot of RAM, especially the larger your application gets. How many people do we have? How many slices? Let me phrase this this way. We have, I want to say, quite a few thousand customers, and some have 1 slice, some have 15. So, we have people like me that just have their blog on it. And then we have people that actually build clustered systems, a couple of database servers, a couple of web servers, a couple of load balancers, and they're all flights. And so it really depends on the different types of setups that people need. Thank you.
That concludes this episode of the SD.RB podcast. See you next time.